Everyone, it's Joe Waxman, and in this video, I want to look at the chart of Michelangelo, the artist, the sculptor. Guys, don't forget to hit the like button, and please subscribe if you have not already. Michelangelo, all right. Born in 1475. Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni, but everyone knows him as Michelangelo. All right, he was an Italian sculptor, painter, architect, which I did not know, and poet of the High Renaissance. Born in the Republic of Florence, his work was inspired by models from classical antiquity and had a lasting influence on Western art. Now he was a master, and he was an archetypal Renaissance man, along with his rival and elder contemporary Leonardo da Vinci. He's considered one of the best artists of all time, and very much a like I said, competitor of Leonardo da Vinci. When I was in art school, because I went to art school, one of the questions would be, and I think this is pretty common, who's a better artist, Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci? And I guess that's not a really fair question, but people are going to ask it anyway. And I think people said different things, but my understanding was that I preferred da Vinci. As to who's better, I mean, that's really up to, it's completely subjective, right? Depends who you ask, but I prefer da Vinci. Just putting that out there. All right. He achieved fame very early on. Two of his best-known works, Pieta and David, were sculpted before the age of 30. Although he did not consider himself a painter, and here's the thing, he did not consider himself a painter, and his paintings are excellent. Da Vinci's paintings were better. I mean, that's what I say. I think a lot of people would agree. And Michelangelo's sculptures were better. I don't know if the Da Vinci sculpted. So Michelangelo was more of a sculptor, Da Vinci more of a painter. Okay. He created two of the most influential frescoes in history of Western art, scenes from the Genesis on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Rome and the Last Judgment on its altar wall. So the Sistine Chapel, not for its I mean, it is an excellent painting, don't get me wrong, but more for its design. That's where it really stands out. Not for so much the skill and the detail of the work, but the overall design of it and the conception of it. That's really where it excels. His design of the Laurentian Library pioneered Mannerist architecture. So he was, an equally esteemed architect, and pretty strong poet as well. He was the architect of St. Peter's Basilica, which is pretty amazing. His biography was published while he was alive. He was a very successful artist while he was alive, especially for the church, the Vatican, who hired him to do a lot of the works. According to Giorgio Vasari, Michelangelo's work transcended that of any living artist, living or dead, and was supreme in not one art alone, but in all three. I guess painting, sculpture, and architecture. I'm not sure if he was including poetry. He was often called Il Divino, the Divine One. His contemporaries often admired his terribilità, his ability to instill a sense of awe in the viewers in his art. Attempts by subsequent artists to imitate the expressive physicality of Michelangelo's style contributed to the rise of Mannerism, a short-lived movement in Western art following the High Renaissance. All right, early life. Let's see. I mean, nothing really exceptional here. Lived in Italy. Mother died when he was 6. And he grew up, his father owned a marble quarry and a small farm. There he gained his love for marble. And then he wasn't interested in academics. He was interested in art from a young age. And he started drawing and painting. And he became an apprentice. Those are the times of where you learn things by becoming an apprentice, and probably the best way to learn, and not a bad way to go, I would say. If I could do it all over again and I had the opportunity to be an apprentice of some kind, I think that would be a good way to learn things. Let's see. He was one of the 2 best students of his teacher. I'm just gonna whip through this just so it doesn't take too long. And he was already starting to do like some amazing works from early on. The Madonna of the Stairs, earliest known work in marble, but he was already painting and drawing. And then he started doing like, the Pieta and David very early on, and just quickly rose to prominence, and was hired to create these works, some of the most famous in all of art history. Like this one, the Pieta, not even biblical. And a lot of Christianity is so incredibly storified that it's just like etched in people's brains, even though it's not like, accurate or true. I mean, the Bible itself is storified by the Vatican. It's heavily, and people probably don't like to hear this or want to agree with this, but books are cherry picked. The story is contrived, edited, redacted. Yeah. And we know that because a lot of the books that were excluded from the Bible, which are equally as valid, tell a different story, but they just want to be like, no, this is what happened, this is the story, instead of opening it up to question and different opinions. They want to just, this is what happened, right? Like, very dogmatic. But that's a side note. The David, one of the most famous sculptures of all time, maybe the most famous sculpture of all time. And one of the things I learned in art school is that the hands and the feet are exaggerated. The hands are much bigger, and probably the head too. And it just it dramatizes it. It makes it more I don't know, a bold, strong, dramatic feel to it. This is another one of his works. Can't see the detail here, but pretty big, bold, and impressive. And it took him like 40 years to do, and he still wasn't satisfied. Here's the Sistine Chapel. This is the brain. A lot of people have commented on this. This is the shape of the brain, and this is God. This is Adam. So the brain, God is in the brain, or somehow God is represented through the mind of man, however you want to interpret it. Touching Adam, obviously human beings have what separates us from animals is we have this thinking mind, which is capable of self-consciousness and spiritual liberation. What's interesting here is these look like kind of satanic devil horns, right? And there's a lot of, it's really interesting when you get like this kind of like Catholic puritanical view on the surface, which is very heavy and dogmatic and rule bound, and it's like, oh no this, no that, like purity. Underneath, it's like kind of like satanic and like devil worshiping and having sex with children and all that, murdering children, stealing, like riches beyond, like poverty. We aspire towards poverty, except we're going to take all your gold and everything and store it in our Vatican, and take all the books and store it in a Vatican. It's like incredibly corrupt. Right. I mean, side commentary there. I got to say what I got to say. All right, so obviously, like, he just became like the biggest artist around. And there's another one, The Last Judgment. Interesting, pretty cool. St. Peter's Basilica. This. He was a devout Catholic whose faith deepened at the end of his life. His poetry includes the following closing lines from what is known. Neither painting nor sculpture will be able any longer to calm my soul, now turned toward that divine love that opened his arms on the cross to take us in. He was abstemious in his personal life. I don't know what that means, except that it's kind of like an ascetic, maybe, perhaps. And told his apprentice, however rich I may have been, I've always lived like a poor man. His bank accounts and numerous deeds purchased his net worth was about 50,000 gold ducats, and I have no idea how much that is in modern riches. I think nobody does, since Joe Biden's like making the printer presses go brrr. Modern expression. Sorry about that. In any case, in massive inflation, we don't really have a sense of our own money right now, but he was very rich. More out of necessity, he ate and drank more out of necessity than of pleasure, and that he often slept in his clothes and boots. So he was kind of an ascetic. He was, like a monk. He lived like a monk, like very poor, even though he was rich. His nature was so rough and uncouth that his domestic habits were incredibly squalid and deprived posterity of any pupils who might have followed him. He was by nature a solitary and melancholy person, a man who withdraw himself from the company of men. Relationships and poetry. Love for a lady's different, not much, in that for a wise and virile lover's trouble. There's a lot of speculation that he was gay, because I think at that time, like, homosexuality was so oppressed. But I gotta say, like, in all my education and all my everything that I've come across, experience, I've come to believe that that people are born gay, and I'm fully for that, because I think it's a karmic thing. You're born. It's a karmic. People have all sorts of karmic, credits and debits, and I'm not saying it's either one. It's probably a combination, but we're born with certain things that we need to fulfill based on our karma in this life, and I think being gay is one of those things for certain people. And so I'm completely supportive of being gay, if that's what you think. I'm not supportive of the modern woke agenda to push gayness on people. I think that's abhorrent. I think it's disgusting. And like, even nowadays, like, they'll even show commercials with gay dudes kissing, and it's like, I think that's disgusting. But not because I think it's disgusting to have that. If that's your thing, fine. But that they're pushing it on people, and they're forcing it. I don't even want to see guys and girls kissing, especially not in commercials. Like, it's totally inappropriate, and it's wrong. And so it's vile and disgusting, and I have no apologies for that, because I know it's coming from a correct place. I'm not against gay people. I'm for gay people. If that's where your natural inclinations are for, and I think they deserve all the same rights and benefits as anyone else. So I'm just putting that out there. I don't like the modern woke agenda that pushes, gayness and sex on children and trans everything, and that's horrible. I'm fully against that. Just be subtle about it. Like, stop throwing it in everyone's face. There's nothing. We don't need to convince people to be gay. They're born gay. Just don't make, neither oppress it with the puritanical stuff like they did in the past, which is why somebody like Michelangelo would have to hide it. I don't care that he's gay, you know. Or now, like, you know, it's the opposite. It's swinging. It's the pendulum. Like, oppress gayness, force gayness upon everyone. Like, just stop. It's horrible, all of it. So anyway, it's a terrible immaturity in society, you know, like the swinging pendulum. Like, nobody's allowed to be gay. Everyone must be gay. Nobody's allowed to be gay. Everyone must be gay. Like, oh my God, you're all fucking idiots. Just shut up. Shut the fuck up. Just leave people alone. Let them be. In any case. So anyway, yeah, he was pretty gay. Even if he wasn't gay, he was gay. I mean, he wrote poetry. He was obsessed with dudes. I mean, he wrote poetry about guys. Maybe beautiful poetry, but it was poetry about guys. And straight men will not do that. I mean, if you do that and you're straight, then you're gay. Yeah, so he was, you know, he was obsessed with various dudes. I feel as lit by a fire, a cold countenance that burns me from afar and keeps itself ice chill. The strength I feel two shapely arms to fill. Two shapely arms. That's a guy. Without which motion moves every bounce. I mean, that's translated, so it's probably much more effective in Italian. I swear to return your love. Never have I loved a man more than I love you. Never have I wished for a friendship more than I wish for yours. Cavalieri, that was his lover, or at least his poetic lover, you know, in return. They were devoted to each other. It's cool. Like, fine. I don't care. I mean, you know, I'm for human. I'm pro-human, which is the point. Like, and if that's your karmic lot in life, then I'm good. I'm good with that. You know, homoerotic nature of his poetry has been a source of discomfort to later generations. Yeah, whatever. All right. So he's a poet. He was a quadruple threat: painting, sculpture, painting, architecture, poetry. Fused with other artists. In letter from 1492, he blamed the tensions between Bramante and Raphael, saying the latter, all he had in art, he got from me, Raphael. So like Michelangelo, Raphael. I think Raphael and Michelangelo, they were two of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then there was Leonardo, and then I don't remember the other one. But in any case, he was a trailblazer. He was somebody who was very original, and that other people copied him. That's the point. All right, let's look at his astrology. Okay, Pisces. Sun conjunct Mars by 6 degrees in Pisces in the third quadrant. Fourth all sign house, but third quadrant. And so that's perfect right there. Like, first of all, Pisces, the sign of the imagination. I mean, no sign represents imagination more than Pisces, right? And third house, skills of the hands, right? Third house, Gemini, or you know, Mercury. That's really where you'd look to for somebody who's very skillful with their hands, who works with their hands. Third house, right? And so we're combining the two things, and we could just leave it alone at that. Like, just be like, okay, well, that explains pretty much everything. Well, not quite, but it explains a lot, right? Pisces suns are very, very imaginative, very mystical, spiritual, creative, artistic. They're escapists. They want to live in fantasy realms. The Mars is going to make him very initiating, very physical. Like, the Mars is more physical, so that's going to ground it a bit, make him be more active, and you know, not just like the town drunk, which maybe he would have been without Mars there, right? Not saying that, yeah. Any case, I guess it's going to be different for everyone. Not, I guess it's going to be different for everyone. But I mean, Pisces does have a connection with drugs and alcohol, obviously. Some Pisces fall down that rabbit hole and never come out. They can never pull themselves up from the downward spiral of drugs and alcohol, unfortunately. And that wasn't the case with him, right? He turned it into a lifelong artistic creation, career, life path, right? Very talented, extremely talented. And the Mars to the Sun is going to make him very active. Obviously, Mars is the exaltation lord of the Sun, because Mars rules Aries. Sun is exalted in Aries. So that's a strong combination, Mars and Sun together. They're go-getters, initiative, tons of initiative, hard workers, very physical, and potential burnout, of course. And I'm sure that the temper is pretty hot when that happens. But generally speaking, it's a good combination for getting stuff done, right? Especially in a sign that does not, Pisces is not a sign that wants to get stuff done. Pisces, like I said, can spend even if without drugs and alcohol, they can spend, their whole life doing nothing, just living in dream la la land. If other factors are supporting that. Right. Moon in Pisces. I mean, so many artists have Moon in Pisces, artists, musicians, because Moon is the inner mind and the emotions, and then Pisces really lends itself to that creativity, that imagination, right? So he's very strong Pisces, very strong third house influence. Even if you look at Mercury conjunct Chiron, it's in Aquarius, but it's in the third whole sign house, very late degree. So if we were just doing like looking at the ascendant, if we see, I always look at the houses from different angles just to try and get the full picture, because my Gemini mind wants to see many different sides of it, right? But like, I imagine the ascendant on each whole sign house. So like 24 degrees Capricorn, 24 degrees Aquarius. This would be in the third house if we use the houses like that, right? And it is in the third whole sign house. So this still has strong third house influence, even though it's in the second quadrant. So yeah, pulling in second house, but also third house, right? Mercury in Aquarius. Mercury in Aquarius is very inventive, very original. Conjunct Chiron, very odd, unusual, different. Definitely, let's see, Mercury is ruling the 7th house and the 9th house. So like, obviously his partnerships, especially like romantic, he never married, right? It's a bit queer, right? Aquarius and Chiron together. That's the first thing that we could sense, that definitely, even if we didn't know anything about the homosexuality, I'd say like, well, he has very unusual tastes in partners. He likes the rejects, the wounded, the different, the odd, both Aquarius and Chiron represent something extremely different, extremely odd. So his taste in romance is going to be like just off the charts, like just complete, like unknown territory, right? Especially as relating to like what's common, the common conception of what he's supposed to do. It's going to be very different, right? And so it's translating into queerness or homosexuality, right? Aquarius likes to do the different thing, right? Off the beaten path. And so does Chiron. And so does Chiron in Aquarius, right? Unusual, very unusual, very different. And so also for his religion, but this is 9th quadrant, 10th whole sign house, which is important to realize. So this Mercury has influencing his religion, but also his career. So second, third house. But third house, primarily Mercury also, remember, represents the skills of the hands. So like Mercury in the third house is becoming very intellectual and skillful. And Aquarius also is very intellectual sign. Now Moon is ruling, I mean, that's kind of carrying in the 7th house as well. Saturn is here, Saturn in poor dignity, Saturn in detriment in Cancer. So yeah, his partnerships are definitely lacking dignity, retrograde, and Saturn, which restricts and delays. I mean, Saturn in the 7th is considered good, but when it's in poor dignity here, that's gonna, especially retrograde, that's gonna alter it quite a bit. I gotta pause it for 1 second, guys. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. All right. So Saturn in Cancer being in detriment here shows the kind of people that he's going to attract into his life. Obviously, not just romantic partnerships, but anyone, any kind of personal relationship. And the poor dignity and Saturn means that he's going to attract kind of authority figures who need his help. Because when planets are in poor dignity in the 7th, you're attracting people who are sort of like, they are undignified. And so how that works is that, like, it can be sick people or people who in some way are relying on you to help them. And it can be negative as well. It can mean it could be like taking advantage of people, but it can also be helping people, right? And so here he's attracting authority figures who want his help, right? They want his help in artistic pursuits, like, so that's why, like, the Pope and various, high, benefactors and would come to him and ask him to paint this, sculpt that, and whatnot. They're requesting his help. They were using his skills to benefit and help themselves rise, represent something bigger or better, right? So that's how that works. And also Saturn as well is going to restrict, especially in poor dignity and retrograde, his relationships as well. But very devotional as well. Very, like, if he has, that's why he had, like, I don't know, 1 or 2 people who were, very, very devoted, kind of gay romantic relationships. I don't know if they were romantic, but at least the poetry represented that. So anyway, yeah, disposited by Moon. Moon is carrying some of that 7th house energy along with Mercury, so attracting people into his creative arts, Pisces 3rd house, right? Sun is ruling 8th house. So, but this is 9th whole sign house as well. So it's 8th, 9th. That's interesting. So, like, there can be some dark themes, but also religious, because 8th, 9th, right? So dark, heavy, death. He did dissect cadavers, right? And so that's a part of things, right? The 8th house is going to bring in that heaviness, the death, rebirth, mystical. And so also he was into occult knowledge, because you saw that with the symbolism, which was very alive and well at that time. The secret societies, the Masons, the occultism, very alive. It was hidden, it was secret. You weren't supposed to know about it, but they did know about it, right? And so that 8th house occultism, esoteric, mysticism, all that was hidden within his works. That was big, part of his paintings, especially because they lend themselves to that a lot. Probably his sculpture too. Yeah, and also obviously the religious element. Most of his paintings and sculptures were very religious. Mars is ruling the 12th and 11th. So obviously the 12th cusp is Jupiter, but this is the 12th whole sign house, but 11th cusp and 4th. So 4th, 5th, actually, because this is the 5th whole sign house. So groups and networks, but also more of that secret mysticism and creativity as well of the 12th. And representing the homeland of Italy, representing hometown, and obviously Vatican and all that. That's very much 4th house, but also the connection to the brick and mortar, right? Because 4th house, obviously. So like Sistine Chapel, sculpture, sculpture would tend to relate to 4th house as well, because of the physicality of it, the earthy quality of it. So that as well as, and the 5th house obviously for the creativity, right? 5th house is very creative. So that's all very appropriate. Jupiter is in the 2nd, which is interesting, but that does explain his riches, his wealth. And Aquarius, interesting, is not, it's not, Aquarius does not have this kind of materialism that something like Taurus would have, right? Or Capricorn, or even, you know, potentially Scorpio with its love of power and control, right? Aquarius is one of those rare signs that doesn't mind poverty or doing without. It's just because it's a very social sign. It wants to spread the wealth. You know, if you were talking about like socialistic type mindset, that would definitely come from Aquarius. Not that I'm a fan of socialism on a, not that it matters or is relevant, but I mean, I'm just trying to, I think there's a place for this kind of ideology, especially when it's not forced on anyone, right? When it's very natural and organic, when people are naturally, you know, sharing minded, community minded, wanting to spread the wealth of their own volition, voluntariness. I think that Aquarian ideal is very healthy and very noble. And he sort of embodied that. So it's interesting combination. Jupiter in Aquarius is often hilarious too. A lot of comedians have Jupiter in Aquarius, and that's where they get the funniness, their funny bone. So, you know, I bet somewhere, somehow he had a very profound sense of humor too. It's his ascendant lord, Jupiter. So it's interesting that it's in the 2nd house. It also shows that he himself has a lot of value, and he himself is a valued resource, right? I'm sure the Vatican loved Michelangelo there. It's like their prized possession, their prize artist. Very different from Leonardo da Vinci, by the way. I don't know his relationship with the church, but I imagine it was much more tenuous than with Michelangelo, who was all about making, you know, religious paintings and sculptures for the Vatican, for the church. A devout Catholic he was. And he valued Jupiterian things, religion, and felt, you know, a lot of security in that and whatnot. Now there is a semi-square between Mars and Jupiter, and that's generally okay because Jupiter is such a benefic that the square or semi-square to Mars, it's not going to produce strongly negative results, maybe excessive in some ways, excessive austerity on the Jupiterian side, or at least, well, now, I don't, you know, Jupiter is also ruling Pisces, so that is bonifying this Mars, even though it is a semi-square. It's going to make it more hardworking, in fact. And yeah, there's probably some excess here from the Jupiter semi-square, but generally okay. All right. It probably makes him more of a hard worker, and yeah, it just bonifies this Mars overall. There's really, I mean, it's not super tight, but it's very strong anyway. This grand air, not air, water trine, right? Pisces, Scorpio, Cancer. It's still quite prominent. Let's see here. So Saturn's landing in between. It's closer to Uranus here. And then Saturn is landing on this side of Mars by 2 degrees. Still quite strong. Neptune and Sun are more aligned. Very strong, very deep feeling, deep passion, deep feelings, deep artistry, right? Water, the emotions flow out of water. So yeah, that's very creative, very passionate, very deep feeling, very strong. And Neptune is trine the Sun in Pisces. Neptune is co-ruler Pisces. This is excellent for the Piscean imagination, creativity. And then the Uranus here for the originality, for him being a trailblazer, for him being a pioneer, right? That's excellent. And he was. And this is Neptune and Uranus in Scorpio is very intense. First of all, Uranus is considered exalted in Scorpio, but we had this conjunction in Capricorn in the 90s, early 90s, and that was a much more dry, materialistic, authoritative Capricornian kind of energy. As far as creativity, it's going to create it was cool for creativity, like very dry expression, right? But here in Scorpio, it's deep and intense and mystical, especially because it's the 12th whole sign house. It's the 11th quadrant. But so I think he probably could have been involved in secret societies, because this right here is very lends itself to that, because Scorpio is very occultic. Neptune and Uranus also will lend themselves to that very much, and as does 12th house, and then 11th house, meaning groups, networks, right? So I think that's why there's a lot of adding to that, the element of occultic mystical symbolism in his artwork that we see represented. That's very strong here. And then the most prominent thing, which I didn't even talk to yet, is this Venus. Look at the S, stationary. Look at this trine, perfect trine to the ascendant. If you want to know where the real star artistic quality it is, it's right here in Aries. Venus in Aries is not super strong because it's opposite. It's domicile in Libra, but it's very focused in Aries, and the stationary quality means it's so potent. Not only that, there's a perfect mutual reception by exaltation with the sun. See, 24 degrees, sun's exalted Aries, Venus is exalted in Pisces. So now we're really seeing a complete picture here of his artistic brilliance and genius. We're even getting the perfect square to the ascendant by the sun. And this also can explain some of his sexuality or preferences. Venus in Aries. Aries is masculine. Venus is the relationships, especially for a man. It's inverted, but it's very strong as well, right? And excellent connection to the ascendant. And fourth whole sign house, but I'm sorry, fourth quadrant, IC, but fifth whole sign house. Where you can say that his IC, his home is in the fifth house of creativity. Right. South node's also here, not too far away, 11 degrees, but still. And south node conjunct Venus shows somebody who is naturally creative, naturally artistic, from birth, from an early age. And that's exactly what it was. Right. I mean, this is amazing. Like, I'm always so super impressed by, because I never know what I'm going to find. I'm like looking up somebody's birth chart, and I'm like, I wonder, if this is going to be difficult to read or not, if this is going to be difficult to make sense of or not. And this is like, it's like almost every single time, it's like just like a gimme. It's like, wow. I mean, I could not have, produced a better chart for an artist than this. I mean, obviously the planets have to make sense. You can't just put the Venus anywhere. It has to be close to the sun. You can't put all the planets anywhere because they might not ever be that way in real life, right? You can't just put all the planets in the exact positions of exaltation and grand trines to the degree, to the second. That doesn't make sense, but it's always perfect. It's always amazing, right? And this Venus is super strong, even though it's not in, because of the mutual reception here. And then we're having third and fourth house, or fourth and fifth house, depending on how you want to look at it. But third for the skill, third house for the skill, the precision skill, Pisces for the imagination, fifth house for the creativity, right? Fourth house for the very physical nature of his work. The marble, which is earth, which is ground, which is the fourth house is land, fourth house is home, fourth house is brick and mortar. And so there is a very physical element to the fourth house, and I think that's very much relating to his marble, love of marble, which is his main art. So I think that's the connection there. Venus is ruling the fifth cusp, no less. Even though it's the sixth whole sign house, it's the fifth cusp, and the MC, right? The career. Boom. Super strong, right? That's pretty amazing, if you ask me. Planets that are stationary are so potent. I don't have any stationary planets, but I have a very slow Mercury, and Mercury is dispositing my moon, my sun, and my Venus, and it's in the seventh house. And so it does give me very good logical thinking ability, analytics, and all that. Right. He has it with Venus, and he's, one of the greatest artists of all time. Okay. That's amazing. North node in Libra. So, I mean, this is like a continuation, because South node is conjunct Venus. Even though it's 11 degrees, it's still strongly influencing it. And we saw that because it was very early on, his artistic, but it's also conjunct the IC, and that also represents early age, right? So two indicators that early on he's going to be an artist, and that his career is going to involve arts, and that he's going to continue that career in arts for the rest of his life. North node in Libra, conjunct the MC. And MC, it's in the 11th whole sign house. So he's going to be very connected to groups and networks, and he was. I mean, you could look at I mean, he's very religious, but then we look at here, Pluto in the ninth quadrant, right? But 10th whole sign house. Obsessive about religion, obsessive about career and religion. And, strongly connected to groups and networks, the church, the Vatican, right? but religion. And then I forgot to mention, Pluto is pretty much opposite Mars and Sun, closer to Mars. But Mars and Pluto together in difficult aspect or conjunct, that creates incredible determination, because these are both planets of will, right? So the willfulness is very, very, very strong, right? Very concentrated. And we have the creative side in Pisces, and then here the Virgo is the puritanical. So he's quite puritanic, obsessively puritanical in religion, and drive to perfection of his creative works. And we want some Virgo, right? We definitely want Virgo in the equation, because of that. He's not like an expressionist. He's not like an impressionist painter, an expressionist painter, a surrealistic painter. He's very realistic, and that's Virgo, and that's the strive towards realism and perfection is the Virgo nature. And so he's obsessive. Pluto's very obsessed about these things, obsessively perfectionist. He worked on that one, it was Moses, for like 40 years, and he still wasn't satisfied for it. Right? 40 years, right? That's insane. And that's that kind of drive and ambition and willfulness and motivation between this Mars and Pluto. And Pluto does have a very strong spiritual element. It is one of the outer planets. It is the outermost planet. And so Pluto in the 9th house is definitely going to create a very, very deep religious nature, especially for Catholicism and Virgo, right? Catholicism, is all about the Virgin Mother, the Virgin Mary, and that's Virgo, right? That puritanical quality that they strive for, which I don't think is healthy. I think it breeds the opposite, debauchery under the surface, and even it's the creeping in of Satanism, because it's just like creating one extreme that attracts the other, right? And this obsession with puritanical dogma attracts, opposites attract, the debauchery, the egoism, the hypersexuality under the veil of Puritanism, right? It's like yin and yang, hot and cold, man and woman, right? Opposites attract. So, any case, what else? Yeah. Let's see, Saturn, there's a light square between the nodes and Saturn. So this is going to be an issue for him. Certain people who he's attracting into his life, who are commissioning him to do things, they're probably going to be a thorn in his side, because they're going to want him to do things that he doesn't want to do, but he'll probably do anyway, because it's his karmic destiny and they're paying his bills. But not the very savory type of people that he's attracting into his life, being that Saturn is in poor dignity, but they have a lot of authority and weight. And let's see, it's ruling his second house, so his money's coming from these people. Definitely, they're paying his bills. These are like the popes and the cardinals and the religious figures who are whatever. They're probably not very dignified in themselves. They're just whatever. Religious figureheads. What else? I don't usually look at, I guess there's going to be some things like when he's young, there's this in conjunct to Uranus and Scorpio, death, sudden death, accidents. I'm not sure how that relates to his life. Maybe his obsession with, or not obsession, but he was interested in cadavers, dissecting cadavers, and I'm not sure. Maybe there were some accidents that happened when he was younger. I don't know. In any case, I think most of it covered. Saturn is Moon, Sun is square the ascendant, but that just indicates fourth house. It's a fourth house relationship, but it's just like it's going to make him more hardworking and more. It's going to have to struggle a bit more. Square, but it's okay. And even though this is conjunct the IC, it's still trying the ascendant, so that indicates fifth house, which is very creative. I think that's it for the natal chart. Let's take a look at the draconic. Saturn in Capricorn, right in the first house. So he himself is quite a disciplined, hardworking authoritarian, right? And that's actually quite true, being that he was so such a like an ascetic, right? An ascetic is somebody who's like a spiritual initiate who gives up the material world. They give up everything. They give up all their money. They give up all their, it's basically what, spirituality in India. A lot of these native spiritualists, they're just poor and meditate all the time, that sort of thing. Like a monk. They're basically monks. And Saturn isn't necessarily a monk. Saturn oftentimes is a leader and a boss and authority figure, but it can be somebody who's very strict with themselves and others. Actually, I forgot to mention, Moon has, look here, this sesquisquare is to Moon, because you see the three dots. Sometimes it's hard to tell in relation to here, but this is the Moon. Saturn to the Moon. Actually, Moon is benefiting this Saturn, but this sesquisquare is still Saturn in difficult aspect to the Moon is going to create emotional restriction, right? Limited emotionality, limited, a controlled, restricted mind and heart. So that is definitely contributing to his sort of ascetic, restricted, monkish type nature. Pluto also very close to the Moon. So there's very passionate, deep, even destructive, but powerful qualities going on here. And sometimes this can relate to mental illness, but definitely powerful and deep psychological, obsessive and bringing death and rebirth, themes of death and rebirth, influencing his mind. Definitely very serious. Pluto Moon can be very, very serious. It's so heavy. Pisces is quite spiritual. Jupiter exalted in Cancer over the Saturn. So there's definitely some good things to come from his benefactors, his relationships, more on a hidden, deeper nature. But this Jupiter in Cancer indicates that a lot of good can come from the various relationships that he has, even if they're not good on the surface. And Jupiter in Cancer would also indicate, definitely like benefactors, strong benefactors. Leo, creativity, And it's, even though it's not conjunct anything, it's, it's 3 planets that are in Leo. So for creativity, that's excellent. And then Virgo for the perfectionism. And this is also 8th, 9th house. So re-emphasizing the occultism, the mysticism, and the religious factors in his life, the puritanical, dogmatic kind of qualities that he held on to. And then here again, Venus in excellent dignity, Venus in Libra. Venus in Libra that is still stationary and conjunct the North Node, conjunct the South Node. His nodes are pretty much reversed. In the 10th house, so it's very prominent Venus. And that's pretty much it. Ascendant in Gemini, excellent for skills of the hands. All right. So that's all I got for Michelangelo. It's very extremely telling and validating for astrology. Once again, as always. And that's it for now. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. And please hit the like button. And subscribe if you haven't already. Book a reading with me. My website is macroastrology.com. My email is macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And I forgot to mention, leave a comment below if you want to say something. And if not, that's okay. All right, thanks. Bye. See you again.